April 1st, 1973. St. Lucie County, Florida. Two men collect rubbish on Hutchinson Island. They hope the discarded cans will fetch a good price at the recycling center. But little do they know, today, they'll find more than they bargained for. In the twisted undergrowth, they make a shocking discovery.
Oh God, it's a body!
The heavily decomposed remains of two young women.
What they found at this site, grown men got physically sick. The bodies had been hacked to pieces and then buried in shallow graves, and then the wildlife had dug them up.
We gotta find someone.
Local detectives rush to the scene. It's impossible to tell when the victims were killed or how long their remains have lain undiscovered.
In the state of Florida, between the humidity and the heat, bodies will decompose within 24 to 48 hours. And when I say decompose, you have to use a shovel to pick them up.
But there is enough evidence to piece together how the women died. Their arms are bound with the remnants of rags. Their bones show signs of knife cuts. And on a nearby tree, investigators discover something unusual. The impressions of thick ropes.
The only reasonable explanation for the marks was from someone with a noose around their neck trying to balance to keep from being killed via hanging.
Detectives are certain the young women suffered a terrible fate. They had been tied up, put in nooses, and then slaughtered.
It was the absolute worst crime that the investigators had ever seen in this county.
To discover the victims' identities, detectives analyzed the evidence. Jawbone fragments match the dental records of 17-year-old Susan Place and her friend, 16-year-old Georgia Jessup. Their clothes are also recovered from the scene. Why anyone would murder these girls is a mystery. Searching for leads, investigators question Susan's and Georgia's parents. Susan's mother, Lucille, last saw the girls 6 months ago. They were picked up from her home in Fort Lauderdale by a man in his 20s called Gerry Shepherd.
Lucille had her doubts about this Gerry Shepherd, but Gerry assured her that he would not hurt the girls, that he would take very good care of her daughter, that his intentions were noble.
When the girls failed to return home, their mothers turned sleuth. Among Georgia's possessions, they found a letter she'd written to Shepherd that had been returned to sender.
The letter gives Shirley and Lucille an address to start the investigation of where their daughter might be. I mean, for all they knew, the girls were still alive. They had just run away.
The mothers tell investigators they traveled to Shepherd's apartment 130 kilometers away in the town of Stewart, and soon discovered he was not who he had claimed to be.
They meet the apartment manager, and the apartment manager explains to them that there's no Jerry Shepherd there, that the person that lives there is Gerard John Schaefer.
The manager then revealed why Schaefer no longer lived at the address.
The manager says that he is in jail for molesting 2 young women on South Hutchinson Island.
Lucille and Shirley's detective work connects former Sheriff's Deputy Gerard John Schaefer to their daughter's murders. He is serving time in prison for the kidnap and assault of hitchhikers Nancy Trotter and Susan Wells 8 months earlier. Investigators immediately recognized similarities between the ordeal they endured and the slayings of Georgia Jessup and Susan Place.
The difference in the 2 crime scenes is that Susan Place and Georgia Jessup were executed. Trotter and Wells got away, but there was a pattern, with Schaefer being the common denominator.
But to convict Schaefer of the murders, detectives know they'll need physical evidence linking him to Georgia and Susan. The former cop's wife, Teresa, provides the connection. She says her husband gave her a present shortly after the girls disappeared.
She tells the police that she does have this beautiful suede bag that Schaefer had allegedly given her as a gift. And after the 2 girls were found, Schaefer tells her to get rid of it.
It's soon clear why Schaefer told his wife to throw it away.
Georgia's mother says, I gave her that bag for her birthday. Why would Schaefer be in possession, and how did he get it?
There can be only one explanation. Schaefer took it as a memento of a horrific crime. After gaining the girls' trust, Schaefer kidnapped them, tied them up, put nooses around their necks, and tortured them.
It's a very chilling scene. It keeps me awake at nights. You have a man torturing you, saying things like, one of you decide which one's gonna die. I'll let the other one go.
After slaying the girls, Schaefer butchers them and buries their remains to cover his tracks. But this scenario has a crucial flaw. Schaefer seems to have the perfect alibi. When Susan and Georgia's bodies are discovered, Schaefer is behind bars for kidnapping.
The question is, how could Schaefer have committed the second crime when he's been in jail since January 1973? It's impossible for him to be in 2 places at once.
But there is a window of opportunity during which he could have carried out the murders.
I do. God bless. Okay, have a good evening, yeah?
Susan's mother says Schaefer picked up the girls on September 27th, 1972.
All right, you all set?
2 months after he was released on bail. A chilling realization dawns on investigators. During his 6 months of freedom before being locked up, Schaefer turned killer.
He got his wife situated, he got his affairs in order, and he committed an execution.
September 27th, 1973. Gerard John Schaefer stands trial for the murders of Susan Place and Georgia Jessup. The jury's verdict is unanimous: guilty. The judge sentences Schaefer to 2 consecutive life terms in prison. But Florida's homicide detectives suspect they haven't heard the last of him. The unique way Schaefer kills suggests Susan and Georgia were not his first victims.
He had experience doing this, he had skills in doing this, and he'd probably been doing it for a while. It would seem extremely unlikely that John Schaefer only ever killed 2 women.
Acting on their theory, detectives hunt for clues connecting Schaefer to missing persons cases across Florida. They learn, before his incarceration for the kidnap of Susan Wells and Nancy Trotter, Schaefer moved his personal belongings to his mother's house. There, investigators make a series of shocking discoveries. Hidden in a box is a collection of disturbing stories handwritten by Schaefer. Grim tales describing sickening violence against women, many with grotesque illustrations.
They were filled with hate, sexual violence, pornographic writings that would make even the most hardened human being violently ill.
It's possible they're fantasies, merely the imaginings of Schaefer's warped mind. But investigators notice a troubling theme.
In all of the stories, Schaefer talks about nooses, tying the victims up, torturing them, just mentally breaking down his victims to nothing.
Is it possible Schaefer's writings are not just stories, but accounts of real murders? His way of remembering past crimes. Detectives are about to discover they've only scratched the surface of Schaefer's depravity. Buried in his past is a trail of horrific crimes that could make him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Investigators sift through the possessions of former sheriff's deputy and convicted murderer Gerard John Schaefer. They're looking for evidence that connects him to the disappearances of women across Florida. Carefully concealed in Schaefer's room is a container filled with personal items. Jewelry, including a small gold locket and a distinctive brooch. They don't belong to any women in Schaefer's family.
Why would Schaefer have earrings and necklaces and other paraphernalia that did not belong to his wife or his mother? Coincidence? I think not.
Detectives link the items to 7 unresolved cases of missing women filed over the past 4 years. It's strong evidence Schaefer is a practiced killer.
The fact that investigators found so many of these trinkets and trophies in Schaefer's home, it would lead us to believe he likely couldn't control himself and only stopped at doing this twice. It would seem very rational that he was a serial killer.
And when detectives share the evidence from Schaefer's trinket box with officers in neighboring counties, the number of potential victims more than trebles.
Other police officers from other states started calling in saying, we've got this missing girl. Do you have anything on her? Could it be Schaefer? It added up real quickly to at least 32. At least 32.
Schaefer must answer for these newly discovered crimes. But the evidence is merely circumstantial. Without the victims' bodies, securing justice will be impossible.
Because there were no bodies to tie him to any of these cases, the prosecutors could not go back and try to convict him. There was a fear that those cases would never be solved.